This is an observation and an argument for why meat is the king of foods and should remain and be encouraged within the human diet. From an evolutionary standpoint, the genus Homo, starting around 2.5 million years ago, diverged sharply from our primate ancestors by becoming specialized faunivores, otherwise known as meat eaters. Our chimpanzee cousins have massive, complex, large intestines, or colons, which are designed to ferment pounds of raw fibrous leaves and plant matter all day. Humans, however, traded that away. We evolved a highly acidic stomach, with a pH close to that of scavengers, designed to kill pathogens in meat. We evolved a long, small intestine, where proteins and fats are easily absorbed, and a drastically shrunken colon. By shifting to nutrient-dense, easily absorbed animal fat and protein, our bodies diverted metabolic energy away from a massive gut and used it to fuel a massive, energy-hungry brain. In that sense, high-quality animal fat and protein are the fuels our modern anatomy was literally built to process. It requires no new adaptations because it is the very pressure that shaped our current digestive tract over 2 million years. Meat, of course, is not the only food source, and I don't want to declare that it is, but simply that it is the king of foods. Beyond this, we have fruits and vegetables and grains. Fruits would be the easiest of the three to both take and digest. From an evolutionary perspective, a plant wants an animal to eat its fruit. The fruit is like a bribe, a brightly coloured and packed with simply, easily digestible sugars, fructose and glucose, so that an animal will consume it, walk away, and poop the seeds elsewhere to spread the plant. Because the plant isn't fighting back, ripe fruit contains very few chemical deterrents and is incredibly easy for the human small intestine to break down. So that seems to be fairly obvious. Meat is king, and fruit is a fantastic complement to the human digestive system. But then we have vegetables, which have some moderate difficulty for the human to digest. So vegetables are the structural parts of a plant: leaves, stems, roots, and stalks. The plant does not want you to eat these, because doing so kills or damages the organism. As a result, vegetables are packed with tough cellulose and structural fibers that humans cannot digest on their own. We lack the enzymes to break down cellulose. They also contain mild chemical defenses, like oxalates in spinach or sulforaphane in broccoli, that can irritate the gut lining in high amounts. We generally require cooking, heat, to mimic the fermentation process and make these structures digestible. Then to come to grains and legumes, the most complicated food source to digest. Grains are the babies of the grass family. They are the seeds. If a seed is digested and destroyed in an animal's stomach, the plant's lineage ends. Therefore, seeds carry the heaviest chemical weaponry of all: phytic acid, or phytates, an anti-nutrient that binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and calcium in the human gut, preventing us from absorbing them. Enzyme inhibitors, chemical compounds that actively block our digestive enzymes like trypsin from breaking down proteins. Lectins and prolamins, for example, gluten, sticky, tough proteins designed to resist enzymatic breakdown. In many people, these proteins can cause the tight junctions of the intestinal wall to loosen, leading to systemic inflammation. I happen to be one of those people. And though grains are at the bottom of the digestive hierarchy, and require massive human intervention such as soaking, sprouting, fermenting, grinding, and baking just to make them tolerable, why did we switch to them? Well, the answer isn't health, it's scale and storage. So you cannot stack 10 tons of wild venison in a granary to survive a 3-year drought, nor can you easily feed a concentrated city of 50,000 people on wild berries. Grains allowed for the birth of civilization, armies, and stored wealth, because they are shelf-stable, carbohydrate-dense energy packets. And we tolerate them today because our ancestors who couldn't tolerate them at all starved during crop failures over the last 10,000 years. But tolerating a food to survive a winter is a very different ecological reality than thriving on it as a default biological fuel. The movement to put meat at the bottom of the dietary hierarchy, or eliminate it entirely, is a product of cultural, philosophical, and moral frameworks, not evolutionary biology. Biologically, our bodies are still optimized for a hunter-gatherer reality. Culturally, however, humans have spent the last few thousand years trying to transcend our purely animal nature. But the idea of avoiding meat isn't entirely modern. However, its origins are strictly philosophical and religious, not physiological. Traditions from well over 2,000 years ago, with religions like Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism, formalized the concept of ahimsa, which is non-violence towards living beings. And it's not because they thought that the human body didn't thrive on meat, it was a spiritual decision based on reincarnation and karma. If an animal has a soul, eating it incurs a spiritual cost. In the West, early vegetarianism was often linked to asceticism, the practice of denying the physical body its natural desires in order to achieve spiritual purity. Early Christian groups and later secular movements in the 18th and 19th centuries viewed meat as a stimulating food that fueled base human passions, aggressions, and sexual desire. Eliminating meat was seen as a way to tame man's wild animal nature and elevate him into a higher moral and spiritual plane. In essence, many of the cultures recognized that meat was our default animal drive, and that is precisely why they sought to restrict it. But we are in the modern age, and there is a modern corporate and industrial twist to all of this. Industrialization and epidemiology. And this is where the biological confusion really kicked in, especially during the 20th century. Western nutritional science began to see a massive rise in heart disease because of a mix of flawed early science. Corporate lobbying still goes on to these days, particularly from the sugar and grain industries, and a desire for cheap, shelf-stable calories, fat, and cholesterol were labeled as the enemy. Because meat contains fat and cholesterol, it was dragged down into the avoid category, leading to the creation of the famous, or infamous, 1992 Food Guide Pyramid, which placed grains at the absolute base and foundation, and meat up near the top as a minimal consumption. If you were born in the 80s, you may well remember this. I do, and it was shown to me at school, and it stuck in my head for a very long time when trying to understand diet in my future. Most modern nutritional studies that link meat to health issues are based on epidemiology, which are population surveys. These studies often fail to separate a person eating a grass-fed steak from a person eating a fast food burger wrapped in a refined flour bun, fried in industrial seed oils and washed down with a sugary soda. And today we live in an era of evolutionary mismatch. This is a term biologists use when an organism lives in an environment it didn't evolve for. And from an evolutionary standpoint, the argument for meat as a nutritional anchor rests on two massive biological facts. Bioavailability. The nutrients in meat are ready to use for the human body. For example, the iron in plants, non-heme iron, must be converted by the body and has a very low absorption rate, around 1% or 10% at the absolute maximum. The iron in meat, heme iron, is absorbed directly at a rate of between 15 and 35%. The same goes for vitamin A, retinol in animal products versus beta-carotene in plants, which requires a highly inefficient conversion process. And the essential nutrients. There are specific nutrients critical for human brain function and cellular health that are either completely absent from plants or incredibly difficult to get without supplementation. Vitamin B12, which is absolutely essential for the human nervous system, and it naturally occurs only in animal products. Creatine, carnosine, taurine, which are critical compounds for muscle and brain function, and they are found almost exclusively in meat. DHA and EPA, the active forms of omega-3 fatty acids required for brain structure, which plants like flaxseed only provide in a highly inefficient precursor known as ALA. And the great irony of all of this, in the modern dietary debate, today a human can live completely without meat and remain healthy, but only because of advanced modern industrialization. A vegan or strictly plant-based diet relies on global shipping networks to provide year-round variety, industrial processing to create digestible meat alternatives, and chemical laboratories to manufacture synthetic vitamin B12 supplements. Without modern technology, a human trying to survive on what is available, such as wild vegetables, wild fruits, and wild uncultivated grains in a temperate winter, would face severe malnutrition. And when we look at the dietary hierarchies of today, we aren't looking at a map of what the human digestive tract needs. We're looking at a map of our current cultural, ethical, and economic values. We have used, ironically, our massive meat-built brains to construct a world where we can choose to ignore the very fuel that built them.